mga kaibigan, my name is Enrico, and of course, welcome to In My Toolbox, where we break down complicated things so you can make smarter business, money, and life decisions. Okay, so today's tool, something you've heard of but maybe never really fully understood. We call it tariffs. So that's why our title for today is why you should care about tariffs. So it's a big word. But by the end of this episode, I tell you, you'll know how it affects the prices in the grocery stores, your business, and maybe even global politics. Okay, so in simple definition, a tariff is just a tax you pay when you bring something into the country. Think of it like a toll gate for imported products. So why it matters to you? Well, look, you have to look at it this way. Why is imported rice more expensive? Okay, so why do local products sometimes cost less, even if they're not better? Maybe those questions really, crossed your mind, not only once, twice, but many times already. Okay, so another thing, why did your favorite gadget suddenly jump in price? You just tell yourself, oh, last year it was not like this. Why it's sudden change? The price suddenly changed this year. All of that, mga kaibigan, can be caused by tariffs. Okay? It may be, so let's just dig in. So, again, we ask ourselves, what is tariff? So the price tag, that nobody sees. That's how I see it. In simple terms, a tariff is a fee the government charges when a product crosses the border into your country. And there are different types of tariffs, the ad valorem tariff and the specific tariff. An ad valorem tariff is a percentage of the item's value. For example, 10% of 10,000 is equal to $1,000. Okay, so, and what you call the specific tariff naman is a fixed amount per item. Say, for example, $100, well, this is just too much, $10 or $50 per sack of rice. So, they actually give them a specific tariff on a certain product. So, why government use these tariffs? Number one, they use these tariffs to protect local industries. So, imported goods, if there are imported goods out there, there's gonna be, if imported goods out there are too cheap, local sellers definitely, they will not be able to compete, right? Or even it's the same amount, the local sellers, they will not be able to compete. The other reason is to earn money, of course. Every imported products with a tariff, it actually gives cash to the government. It goes to the government. All of this money from the tariff, it goes to the government. And that supports our country, right? So, another reason is to pressure other countries. Maybe you've seen a lot of this in the news today, that there's what you call a tariff war. It pressures the other countries. So like when they use a weapon during, they use this tariff like a weapon during these trade wars. Okay, so let's just say an example. You're importing a Korean face mask into the United States. It's just an example, If the government adds like $20 tariff per box, your $100 per box, it will now cost $120 to bring it in, and you will have to charge more just to break even. So that's just how this work, right? So now, where the history and politics of tariffs? Tariffs are not new. It's been there for a long time. This is actually an ancient power moves by governments. Tariffs have been around since ancient civilization, back when there were kings, because kings used them to control trade routes. Now in modern times, countries still use these tariffs to protect their economy. And of course, this you've seen this a lot in the news again. They send political messages across the globe. So to start or even end trade wars. Example, U.S. versus China right now. The U.S. raised tariffs on Chinese products. And then you've seen this in the news. China hit back as well on their tariffs. So in the Philippines, rice tariffication in the Philippines used to protect farmers. But made rice more expensive for everybody. So, in simple terms, tariff can cause global fights. And in every trade war, it's us, the ordinary people, farmers, workers, and the consumers, right, who actually will feel the effect of the tariff, right? So, now, who wins and who loses? Well, someone has always to pay on tariffs. Who benefits, right? Local businesses, of course, they don't have to compete with cheap imports. So they will actually definitely benefit on this one. Government, of course, because we talked about that earlier, they collect money, right? But the other question is the other side of the coin. Who saw first? Of course, you and me, the consumer. You pay now higher prices. And importers, they pay more to bring products in. And in a country such as for example, Philippines, who are so used on seeing imported products, well, they start to look more on these imported products, more expensive now, or maybe it's not even in the shelves anymore. Exporters, on the other hand, if other countries retaliate, their good gets taxed going out. So, that's what's been happening in the news. That's how you would interpret them. So if we raise tariff on imported pork to protect local pig farmers in the Philippines, that's going to be great for the farmers. But now you, the buyer, you'll have to pay more, per kilo in the groceries or in the market. See? So tariffs always have a winner and loser. The trick is figuring out who's actually really paying. And it's usually us. It's usually you. So, how does tariff affect businesses? Okay, there's of course domino effect in this one. Tariffs don't just hit the big guys. They trickle down to the small businesses. Oh no, I'm talking now about you business owners. So, let's just say you own a small coffee shop. You import, Italian espresso machines. A new 15% tariffs gets added into that. Now your cost goes up. You either, number one, pass it on to the consumers. To your customers. Now, if you do that, there's of course a risk of what? Losing them, right? Or if you don't want to lose them, or you might be able to absorb it. You will allow yourself to cut profit. So what's going to be the business impact if that's the case? Of course, supply chains get disrupted and inventory becomes more expensive. Pricing strategies have to change quickly and adaptable because of these tariffs. And tariffs can actually force small businesses like you guys and me, all the we owners to pivot fast, rethink suppliers, or even shift their product line very, very fast. We have to be adaptable to what's happening in the tariff, if that's the case, right? Now, let's talk about tariffs in the Philippines. Why you pay what you pay? Well, the Bureau of Customs and Tariff Commission in the Philippines, they handle tariffs, even here, of course, in the United States, wherever you go, there's always going to be tariffs. Like the common tariff targets in the Philippines, rice, sugar, meat, electronics, the cars, So what you've seen in the news today, imported onions are expensive. Why? Tariff again. Local pork prices are higher than imports. Maybe, if that's the case, maybe tariffs are low. So, let's just talk about your phones. Why your phone costs more than, and maybe in the Philippines than here in the U.S. I don't know if you've seen that. Yep. Because of tariffs and taxes. So you would see that, right? Hey, why is it more expensive there than the United States? And you've seen that many times, right? Now, in the Philippines, too, you've heard too many times rice tariffication law. Before government, limits the rice imports, of course, to protect the farmers. Now, anyone can import rice. But what's going to be the effect if anyone can import rice? They must have to pay tariffs. The result now, more rice option, but local farmers suffer. You've seen this one today. You can actually see it today. You hear it every day that local farmers are suffering at the moment. Tariffs have become tool to balance farmers' protection, price control, and food. The food supply, but it's not perfect. Someone always gets squeezed in the situation of these tariffs, right? So, tariffs versus trade agreements. When countries make deals, like you've seen it, Trump here in the United States dealing with Canada or wherever, right? The trade agreements are basically contracts between countries to lower or maybe you remove tariffs. You've seen the president of the Philippines coming over here in the United States, talking about, hey, can we lower tariffs? This make it easier to do business. If that's the case, we encourage exports or imports. And let's just give you an example. Like the ASEAN Free Trade, Philippine-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement, or RCEP. There's a mega deal in Asia. What it means is when countries lower tariffs together, not just one country, together, it becomes cheaper for business to operate across borders. Now, who wins? Definitely you and me, the consumers. But only if local businesses can compete. Again, I've mentioned a while ago, right? Especially the rice tariffication law. The local farmers, they're not able to compete with the prices. So the analogy here, it's like agreeing not to charge entrance fees at each other's store. That's the analogy of what's going to happen there if everybody is in the same page, hoping both stores get more customers instead both stores losing them, or worse, there's just one person winning and then the rest of the business tumbles down. Now, the current trends and headlines today, right? The tariffs today, it's not just about money. U.S. is still using tariffs to rebuild its factories. They would want, or here in the United States, Trump would want to bring jobs here inside the United States. Now, on the other hand, Chinese exports are under pressure. Why? Due to the rising tariffs. Climate change is actually entering the picture. The new carbon tariffs, tax goods made with dirty energy. Can you imagine? Tariffs is actually included into that. There's what you call French shoring. What is this? Is countries now prefer to trade with your allies. Now, Philippine trading, we trade more with Japan than China. So that's just an example. Tariffs are no longer just economics today. I remember when I was back in school, when I was looking into tariffs, I always look into, countries, talking about this tariffs altogether because of economics. But now there's a lot of moving elements like politics, like environment, and even national security. They use that tariff, not only just economically, but other major factors as well. So the reason why I want to talk to you guys about this one is just to give you a little bit of an idea what tariffs is, because I know nowadays a lot of countries are talking about tariffs. So again, when you mention about tariffs, guys, it's the hidden price of everything. Again, it's not economics now. There's a lot of moving elements in tariffs. Again, I mentioned politics, environment, and national security, right? So next time, okay, you hear someone say global trade, or you see in the news about a new tariff, don't tune out. Try to lean in, try to listen to it, try to understand. So you'd see the global picture, and maybe you'll get the answer. So that's the reason why. A good example is cell phone in the Philippines is more expensive in the United States. Now you get it. Why? Because of tariffs and taxes. So these are not boring economics, because it has an impact to your hard-earned money. So these are real rules that affects your wallet. These are real rules that affects your business and even as a country as a whole, right? So you pay for tariffs every time you shop. Well, it affects you, right? Small businesses, you survive or maybe even fold depending on tariffs. Okay? So, for example, your rice, 20 pesos per kilo. Okay, so an imported good or rice comes in and they sell it for 15. So how can you compete? Right? So it's either the business survives or fold depending on the tariffs. Right? Government policies can help or can actually hurt you. And we all feel the result no matter what. Right? So this is just a a quick view, guys, why you should care about tariffs. So again, this has been a very short topic for In My Toolbox. Again, I told you, this is where you gain the tools to see what's really happening under the surface. My name again is Enrico Pobre, and whether you're a consumer or an entrepreneur, policymaker, now you got a sharper tool in your kit. So see you in our next episode.